Hi, Dot. Good to see you.
Hey, Courtney, good to see you too. Hey,
I
Jim.
love
Hi,
seeing
you?
pictures of your new puppy online. Oh my goodness, she's cute.
She's a handful.
Oh well, apparently that's what they say about puppies.
We can make this interesting and all bring our puppies into the room.
I had to kick my puppies out of the room just in case, an
Yeah,
Amazon
I figured.
delivery came. They're not happy. They're right outside the door, just waiting for me to open it up again.
As long as Amazon doesn't make any deliveries, we're just fine on this thing.
It's Amazon or it's someone, mail, could be anything really that triggers them.
Give it a couple minutes and let everyone enter.
What's the song? The waiting is the hardest part. Could bring out my guitar.
Background music. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you bring out my guitar, but you don't want to hear it, so it's okay.
No.
I don't want to hear it.
It's true.
Okay, I think I will start. Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Robert Biber. I am the president of the Capital Chapter. Today, I know this is a topic that's been on everybody's mind as we approach re-entry for offices and returning to the office and ensuring a safe and productive workplace. This is going to be a panel discussion on cyber and network security, office design, real estate trends, logistical challenges, and recommendations for a hybrid work environment, sanitation considerations, which we all have to think about. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our facilitator, moderator, Courtney Leonard, for introductions.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to see some of your faces and just see that people are still tuning into these Zoom meetings. And we really hope that we're here today to bring you some valuable information. I know that we've kind of spoken about return to the office, but things are still becoming real, and we're sort of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So if you don't know me already, I look forward to meeting everyone in person soon, but my name is Courtney Leonard. I've worked for Office Movers Express and the parent company Washington Express for more than 15 years. We have been thrilled to be longtime supporters of the ALA and have always valued the partnerships and friends we've made with members of the group over the years. So we're excited to hopefully bring you some valuable and educational information here. But before we get started, I have a little contest for you guys for a piece of swag. So the first person who enters in the chat box what my background picture is from will get a piece of Office Movers Express swag. So does anyone know what this background is? Elena Lopez, yes, The Office.
Wow, it's quick.
Wow.
TV show The Office. That was fast, yes.
That's impressive.
That's really impressive.
I will write that down. We'll get you something out.
Kind of like that
this
show.
week. Yeah. So just the purpose of the panel was really, now that most firms have defined a timeline to the return to office, we still know there are a number of unknowns with regard to addressing key details related to office space, design, disinfecting and sanitization, and various IT and networking issues that are going to be needed to accommodate a new flexible work environment. So today's panel will discuss both the immediate and the long-term implications of returning to work post-pandemic, and we will address the unique needs of a new and hybrid workspace. So after the panel, we will have a quick Q&A time, but throughout the discussion, I really encourage anyone who has a question or a quick comment to please just enter it in the chat, and I'll keep my eyes out for them. Any questions that you have? I know that this is really kind of a relevant topic for people, and if you have something that comes up right off the top of your head, please don't hesitate to just throw it my way. So let me just start by introducing each of the panel members who are ALA business partners. First, we have Antonello Musumichi, who is Antonello is a lead workplace designer in interior architecture with global design firm Gensler. Antonello has worked with law firms both locally and nationally for over 20 years. Next up, we have Jim Durfee. He is a veteran in the office moving and storage and logistics industry and has led thousands of law firms through some of the most complex and thoroughly orchestrated moves in the industry. Andrew Renart from Cressa. He is a senior vice president with Cressa, specializing in representing the interests of commercial office occupiers and law firms throughout the Washington, D.C. metro area. Finally, we have, second to last, we have Jeb Byrne, who is the CEO of Barefoot Ventures. Barefoot has taken the same technology and chemicals used in operating rooms pre-pandemic to the commercial sector for some of the largest corporate firms in the country. And then finally, we have Jim Turner, who is the Executive Vice President of Business Development for Frontline Managed Services, formerly Hilltop Consultants. Jim has managed technology for the DC law firms, for various DC law firms for over 20 years. So thank you all for being here today. Let's get right into it.
For having us.
Yep. So numerous legal industry publications are citing that lawyers are pushing heavily to remain remote after the pandemic is through. Are your legal customers revisioning their future space needs in such a way that supports this notion? Let's speak to the commercial real estate aspect with Andrew.
Jump right into it. Thanks, Courtney, for the introduction. Really happy to be here and love being a partner of ALA. We've been doing this for several years now and have really enjoyed making relationships. But to get right into your question, it's certainly something that we've seen. This is, as I tell people, we're sort of in the third or fourth inning of this game, so to speak. There are no clear-cut answers for firms yet. I think that's something that's still developing. And I think if there's any common theme that we're hearing is that people and attorneys specifically are desiring to maintain some degree of flexibility. So the operative word is flexibility. We don't think that it will go back to being exactly the way it was with attorneys in the office Monday through Friday for 15-hour days. But what that looks like and what the final outcome will be very different for every firm, because every firm has an individual culture and outlook on a variety of different topics, which I'm sure we'll cover today.
And on that topic, I did fail to mention that we do have a poll question, and it is related to sort of firms' plans. Can we get that poll question up, please, Sierra? It's just an interesting question to see, is your firm implementing a flexible remote work plan upon your return to office? I know some people are sort of waiting things out. Some people are already have things in place. So it would be interesting to see where we're at with this group of firms.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, a couple more coming in. like we have a resounding yes in terms of firms' plans to offer some sort of hybrid or flexible work plan. I'll just go ahead and end the poll there. It looks like yes is won by a mile. So Antonello, as far as the office design aspect, what would you say are you hearing from your legal customers as far as a need to plan a space that better fits, some people coming into the office and being more flexible?
Yeah. Well, first of all, good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me today. Talking to you a little bit about this topic. During the pandemic and during the 6 to a year that we've been working from home, Gensler invested quite a bit of time and effort in the research. And basically, analyzing, interviewing many different market sectors and understanding, what workers in the US are thinking, and just in terms of workplace. And to zoom in into the legal aspect, actually, the data that we got says that 50% actually of the legal market wants to go back to work with no days at all. 26% 1 or 2 days. 14%, 3 or 4 days, and then just only 10% is willing to stay home. So, as the research show, most of the U.S. workers or most of the legal workers really want to go back to the office, and the reason behind that, it can be because they still continue to see the physical workplace and the in-person collaboration as a key aspect of their job. And mostly the driving reason they want to go back to, they want to go back to the workplace to collaborate, but they want also to go back to socialize with other people. And it is also important for the long-term positive aspect they can have in their career and within the organizational relationship. That being said, it's still true that many of the aspects and many of the benefits that people had from working from home in the last year, basically, and the greater flexibility will need to be reflected into the future of the workplace. So once we think how the office is going to be shaping, really we need to start thinking and as everybody's mentioning, to an hybrid solution where home becomes an important part of the workplace now.
Interesting. It's you get different views and different opinions from different industries and different age groups. So that's interesting. Right. Your research, your survey research is interesting. So logistically speaking, what are some short-term office and storage solutions you've noticed your legal customers are using to accommodate this constant fluctuation or quick, a quick demand to make changes inside their workplace in terms of, accommodating remote or hybrid work? Jim Durfee of Office Movers Express.
I guess one of the things that struck me, having been in the business for a while, noticing there were trends that people tended to repeat the same things over and over again. There was a certain pattern to it over a period of time, at least renewals. And certainly most of my esteemed colleagues on this panel are planning for the long term in general practice. We tended to also. We tended to look ahead and see when the entire firm would move. But as we've all learned over this past year, things have happened much more quickly. People want answers more quickly. They're expecting things to happen fast. So I would say from the short term, that's really, we've had to retool and rethink our entire process, because that's what is being demanded out there. The first thing is clean out. Remember, there were a number of firms that were all declutter firms. That was a big thing for a while. They're still around, that would help you declutter your house, let alone your office. And yet now that seems to be on the top of everyone's list. So I'd say the things we've been noticing is how can people repurpose their office, divest themselves of some space, some overhead costs in real estate, unfortunately, to Cress or Gensler's concerns, all of ours, I guess. But how can they move things into storage? Obviously, there's a possibility of on-site in some cases, but there's also off-site storage. So I think what we've learned is to be nimble, to be quick, and to react to people's needs because they come up very fast. No one's quite sure where this is going. So you don't want to get rid of everything. Put a few things in storage, hold on to it until you're really sure. And then, of course, moving things to people's homes. So I think in the cases of attorneys, other staff working from their homes, they need the right equipment, the right technology. Jim will speak to that a little bit, but the right equipment. These new sit-stand desks have come down in price considerably, very useful in the home for a lot of different purposes. So I see people using that, scanning documents. We just moved a law firm a couple of weeks ago that swore they were not going to take a single filing cabinet full of paper to the new site. They didn't. Not one filing cabinet moved. So everything was either scanned or it was tossed out or was sent to offsite storage. So that's a big change as well. The big file rooms, everything else. So the idea is to cut it down, and it's happening quickly.
And it sounds like because there were so many unknowns during the last 18 months that, some firms decided to, at some point needed to create more space in between, workstations. So they, utilized short-term storage, and sort of that's a good solution if you're not sure what the future looks like for your firm, and you just need to, create different types of working environments.
If I could add one more thing, donation of items has become a big deal. There are a lot of outfits out there, a lot of charitable outfits, companies, organizations that are looking to help charities or are charities themselves, and they're looking to support them. So this has opened up a stream of furniture that is going to, and that's become a big outlet for a lot of items going to help these charitable operations.
That's a really good point. Really good point. So after, we've all been working from home for the most part for the last 18 months. So I know adjusting to going back into the office, and a lot of, DC law firms especially are going to be dealing with the whole process involved in getting to the office, whether that means mass transit or, elevators with multiple people, and just kind of a very different situation that they've been in for the last 18 months. So that's going to be an adjustment. So what changes do you foresee for the future of office design, Antonello?
It's a little difficult to say at this point. Everybody would love to have like a kind of the future sphere and see what the changes that we will be. But I believe that adopting the hybrid work model, that will be the major changes that will be in the workplace. People already work in hybrid work mode even before the pandemic, but I think the pandemic worked a little bit as a catalyst to accelerate certain, this kind of a model, and we believe that supporting, this hybrid, typology, let's say, might be the next evolution of the workplace. The data has shown that for many years, even before COVID happened, who had flexibility, workers that had flexibility and work in many different locations, that could be home or it could be even different settings within the office space, are the ones that are most satisfied with their jobs, are the ones that they actually have the best experience. And if the worker has the best experience and is most satisfied, definitely tend to perform better. In terms of changes within the workspace, again, it's a little difficult, but we can foresee, an increment of private spaces. And an increment of private spaces also that promote collaboration and social interaction within the office. So once we start designing a space, we need to think at this model And we need to think about spaces that are flexible and can also serve different myriads of use in a way. And and that serve like the workers across many different type of work they do. The implementation, though, it will be kind of interesting because it really it needs a buy-in from the plan for part of the company. It's crucial at this point for that's once some decision of those are made, there's the planning process. And in the planning process, that's law firms, include their people, the lawyers and their staff in solution. If you drop this, new technologies, or tomorrow you will say to people, hey, that's the way you're gonna work, that it will be a little bit, might backfire, a little bit in a way. So has to be a plan in place. And in order to make a plan in place, you have to get buy-in from all the stakeholders. And one thing that we always suggest is like, workshops, surveys within the staff, which I'm sure like many law firms has done already. But maybe the biggest one is a piloting different solutions in the next 6 months. And before you may start making physical changes into your space, make sure that whatever changes you make, they actually work for your particular firm. Because at the end of the day, there is not a solution that works for everybody. And the solutions are given by, different culture, different law firms, different markets, different locations. They're all kind of have to work together.
A good point to sort of pilot the different, especially significant changes within an office design and sort of the culture. It's a good point to pilot any new changes really before rolling it out firm-wide. So let's think about hygienic considerations that firms should be taking when they're planning to have at least the majority of their staff returning to the office. Jeb, what should administrators know when choosing a plan or a specific service to ensure their staff is, kept healthy, not only in their private workspace, but in communal and shared workspaces?
Yeah, it's important to realize that each year, illness costs U.S. employers $530 billion in lost productivity. So it's important to have, place an emphasis on a clean and healthy overall workspace. And it's very important for firms to realize that there's, the differences between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. Cleaning is, simply worrying about all the aesthetics inside of the office. So the vacuuming, the trash removal, the dusting, making sure that when we have meetings every single day, when individuals walk into there, it's aesthetically pleasing. Sanitization is the hot button word that everyone sees on the news every single evening. And sanitization is simply reducing the number of pathogens or bacteria that's on a surface. And so say we have 50 million pathogens or bacteria on a surface and we reduce it by 50%. That seems like it's all well and good, but you still have 25 million pathogens running around a surface. And then disinfecting, it's kind of now being brought to the forefront where with the pandemic, but that's, killing exactly what's on the surface. And so, creating a sterile workplace. And, that's very important for employee wellness and overall risk mitigation as a whole. And kind of back into the educational process of everything, what groups realize is that the spray bottle and rag that we've seen, in our homes used and that we see in every commercial office building used, when you spin that bottle around, there's a dwell time on the back of that product. And for the most part, that dwell time can be upwards of 10 minutes. So in order for that product to actually work, that product needs to sit wet on the surface for 10 minutes. If any of us here had a spray bottle and they sprayed a surface, that product's probably going to dry up after almost 5 minutes. You'd have to reapply that spray after another 5 minutes to get the full 10 minutes in order for all killing apparatus to take place. And then with the, the rags that we all use, what we need to worry about is cross-contamination of where those rags were used previously, whether it's used in a restroom or a back office kitchen area. But what blacklight studies have now shown is that a right-handed individual is going to do an awesome job getting that right side of the surface. They're going to, miss the left side, and vice versa, left-handed individual on the right side of the surface. So there's new types of technology that have always been around, but are now kind of coming to the forefront in order to alleviate human error and to make individuals feel like they're entering into a safer place. And one of those technologies, how it works is it charges the chemical so that it attracts to the oppositely charged surface to provide a full 360-degree wrap on that surface. And so, it really enables you to disinfect and create a safe workplace on all touch points inside of a facility.
So it sounds even more, a couple things. You were the one who taught me about the difference between cleaning, sanitization, and disinfecting. So I think that's a really interesting distinction to make there. But this becomes even more critical as we see more shared workspaces, especially when some people are coming into the office on certain days, and then other people are using that space on other days. And so what's the best way that law firms can educate or market to their employees to ensure that they are comfortable knowing that that shared workspace has been taken care of, it's been cleaned, and they should feel comfortable coming back into the office after a flexible work situation?
Yeah, it all comes down to marketing. It's extremely important for firms to market to their team of employees that they're entering into a safe place. Everyone's been at home for the past year. They've been Googling, reading stuff on the internet. They've been watching the TV. Everyone's a lot more educated because, a year ago, whenever anyone walked into their home or their office space, as long as there wasn't a potato chip left on the ground or the restroom smelled fresh, everyone, mentally thought everything was good to go. Now we've been a lot more educated and realize that there's a lot of different viruses and bacteria that are on the surfaces. And from a marketing standpoint, there's three things that we've seen that firms are doing. The first is firms are, holding just a quick high-level lunch and learn for their team of employees to let them know, here at XYZ firm, this is what we've done to place your safety and of your wellness of the utmost importance. The second thing is, videos. Where a lot of us are visual learners, so it's very easy for a firm to place a video on their intranet or in the lobby area where firms used to have their mission and their vision on a TV slide. Now they have a quick video that shows exactly what's being done inside of their firm. And then the third thing, back to the hybrid kind of shared space, is that, if a partner or an attorney is using an office one week and another partner or attorney is using it the next week, that they want to be ensured that they're entering into a safe workplace and those germs and bacteria that were in there from the one partner is not there anymore. So, the marketing that firms have done is they placed a perforated sticker seal on that shared workspace or in that conference room, so that when that individual walks into the space, they're breaking open the seal into a freshly disinfected space, just like you're seeing at hotels when you check into a Marriott hotel on a business trip.
Good suggestions. Thank you, Jed. A recent Wall Street Journal article detailed the many cybersecurity challenges of managing a team of hybrid workers who are constantly moving between their home computers and networking systems to the workplace. So, Jim Turner, what should administrators and IT groups be asking their IT providers? What kind of questions should they be asking to ensure that their staff, especially dealing with a lot of confidential and secure information, that they maintain a secure and confidential workplace and network security, both in the office but also from their home office?
Sure. Thanks, Courtney. So a lot of consideration should be placed on the encryption of data and what we're doing to protect our data, our applications, and our remote connections. If laptop computers, portable computers, are being taken back and forth to the office, we should be asking our IT service providers, what are we doing to encrypt both the contents, what's on the laptop, and what are we doing to encrypt the connections that we're making to the office wherever we're working from. Recently, there was a high-profile breach and ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline. And while a lot of people are focusing in on the credentials that were used to remotely access that network and place ransomware on the network, we should also be looking at how were hackers able to access that network from an unauthorized location. If we have people that are working remotely, we should be paying attention to where they're working remotely. We should be making sure that random locations, even if they have credentials, that people can't access those networks? How many of your firms are blocking connections that might be initiated from a foreign country, even if the credentials are valid? Is there any reason why somebody should be accessing your network from Russia, from South America, from anywhere else in the world where your attorneys, where your staff may not be working from? That is something that can be done to protect networks, is limiting where people can connect from. Right now, with people working remotely, there's also greater risk for losing equipment. So we need to make sure that we're encrypting the hard drives of our computers so that if a computer gets lost, that somebody can't access data if they should access that laptop, if there's documents that have been checked out on that hard drive. So that's something that's important. And then finally, what are we doing to protect our credentials? In the case of Colonial Pipeline, credentials for a VPN connection were at some point phished or hacked. They were found on the dark web by the hackers. So aside from making sure that we're keeping control of our credentials, disabling user accounts that are no longer necessary, every firm should be using multi-factor authentication. And you might see this in various articles on the internet now and in the news about a firm didn't have multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is a way of verifying that somebody is who they say they are when they have access to those credentials. And many of your bank accounts already have this, where if you sign in from a computer that's never been used before, where it's going to prompt you to either use a code that you're generating by some kind of device that you're carrying, or perhaps it's sending you a text message or calling you to make sure that you're in possession of your wireless phone, to make sure that you are really the person using that username and password. And it's always amazing to me to see how many firms or how many businesses aren't doing this right now when it could prevent so many of the breaches that are occurring. So making sure that we're encrypting our data, encrypting our connections, making sure that we're controlling where we can access our firm's networks and our data from, and then finally making sure that we're controlling our credentials with multi-factor authentication. These are all things that we should be talking to our IT professionals about.
Thank you. Good, really good points, Jim. As far as logistically speaking, when considering or, at least maintaining many attorneys and associates working partly from home and partly from the office, I guess logistically speaking, Jim Durfee, do you have any suggestions or thoughts on, how administrators can, coordinate these dual workplaces for their teams?
Well, our crews are subject to HIPAA legislation to understand it, know what it is, and abide by it. So our packers handle what can be very sensitive records. Our movers are moving them, the drivers. And within the office space, everyone expects that to happen. I think there could be, in some cases, some thought that does anyone really think about it when it's going to the home? HIPAA applies everywhere. It doesn't matter where it is. So I think one of the things that firms should be making clear that when they're moving items to the home, they should be under the same strict regimen that they are in the office. Do the whoever is taking these items home, staff, attorneys, are they locking them up? Are they keeping them secure? So not just the network, which Jim obviously covered very well, the network itself, but the actual documents. Are they leaving them out in the open? So are they making sure? And I don't know, from a legality standpoint, from a legal approach, what power the firm has over a person's home and the way they handle and store their records. But I would think that's something that all administrators would at least want to ask that question. How deeply involved can they get when these items go to somebody's house? How are they being stored? How are they being handled?
Good addition. Thank you, Jim. Back to really the cyber attacks, just ever so briefly, Jim Turner. You touched on some suggestions as far as what firms should be doing to ensure that remote work, remote server situations are secure. But would you say that your legal clients have gotten to a point where most people are taking the precautions that they need to be taking in order to ensure their data stays safe? Or do you think we're sort of behind the curve in terms of or in comparison to other industries?
I think that you would be surprised how many times I have a conversation and find out that what I think are the obvious steps need to be taken to secure your data, your clients, your network have not been taken. This past week, I had a conversation with a firm administrator for a smaller firm where they're using really what we call it, an end of life product for their email system. And while this isn't specific to the threats and to the situation caused by the COVID pandemic, there's still some old equipment, there's still some old software out there, and some firms have not made the necessary investments to secure their data, their email systems. So there's still some significant risks out there. And perhaps over the past year, the past 16 months, firms have been preoccupied with scrambling to get people working remotely, to dealing with other challenges caused by COVID. But firms do need to take a serious look at where they have positioned themselves when it comes to security, because there's going to come a point where it's no longer optional. There's more firms are receiving questionnaires from their insurance providers, from their clients, from their banks, from various partners as to whether or not they're taking the necessary steps to secure their environments. And while there was a time where you could say, no, we haven't done this, we're going to, or this security is not applicable to our firm, that's going to change, and that there's going to be much more accountability when it comes to protecting your data, protecting your clients. And I do think that as firms are coming back to the office, that this is the right time to have those conversations, to make sure that there is a plan to have the proper security tools, both when it comes to encrypting and securing the data, but also monitoring the networks, making sure that we know where people are connecting from, when they're connecting, so that firms have those controls in place to make sure that they don't have those data breaches, which can be damaging at so many levels when it comes to just your client relationships, the name of the firm, even as Jim mentioned, when it comes to HIPAA violations. Firms of all sizes need to take this seriously, and they need to realize that money will need to be spent to secure these environments, that these threats, they're not going to go away. They're really, these ransomware gangs are making so much more money off of these threats right now. There's no reason for them to stop. And so long as firms don't have adequate security, or businesses don't have adequate security, they won't stop. And it becomes not a matter of, will you have this type of cyber incident, whether it's a breach or a ransomware incident? It becomes a conversation of when and what you're doing to mitigate that risk, and how you're going to control it, and how you're going to recover.
Sure. And just to put things in context, and then we'll sort of close out this topic, I recently read a study by the World Economic Forum that published, there was a 238% increase globally in cyber attacks between the months of February and April 2020. So I think it reiterates the importance of making sure that your networks and your remote working situations are secure. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
In the news, I continue to hear about law firms and having a competitive advantage, and wanting to attract the best talent and keep the best talent. So how are firms planning their office spaces to help accomplish or get an edge over their competitors? Andrew, you want to speak to the commercial real estate aspect of how?
I'll talk a little bit more. I'll focus more on the buildings themselves that our tenant clients and law firm clients are evaluating. Maybe Antonello can talk about the design itself, but I think that what we're seeing is a response from the landlord community and developer community to the need of law firms in the area of recruiting and retainment, and being able to offer a space that really excites and attracts the best quality associates, and also retention of partners and attorneys. And some of those things really translates to buildings that check the box in terms of amenities. It's what landlord can, the environment sort of what landlord can one up the other to get to land that big law firm anchor tenant. So we're seeing rooftop terraces that have a lot of communal space, really cool sort of lounge, rooftop setups where you can have events, you can have a lunch break with a colleague. We're also seeing really improved high-end luxury gyms basically being built as a building amenity, free for the tenants. So stacked with, the latest Peloton machines and exercise, all sorts of classes, yoga, and anything you can imagine under the sun, as well as who can create the most dramatic, stunning lobbies, right? And so that's sort of an arms race, so to speak, among the landlord community to try to attract tenants. And we don't believe that's going to go away anytime soon, because the market has weakened in a way where landlords have to do even more of that to attract the right law firm tenants. And so, going back to sort of the general point that people have been making, creating a space that's flexible yet brings people together for an experience where they can collaborate and interact in a way that they can't do online, right? So what that looks like in the actual tenant space, I'll defer to Antonello and his background on that.
No, you are exactly right. Those are like mostly the trends that we've seen. I mean, the fight for talent, has been kind of an important point for law firms even before the pandemic. And we wanted to believe that the space, the physical space, will help a little bit. Would help a little bit to hire, to be as a catalyst or an attraction point for some of this younger talent. So some of the younger generation. But again, we've done many surveys about across like all demographic and across like age groups. And it's the interesting part that comes from these surveys is that what is really, that the people are actually, the askings are very pragmatic. For us, it was very interesting that like the first things in this survey was coming up, it was the parking is the most important thing, which is kind of interesting. It doesn't have anything to do with really the physical space, the interiors, but it's more like of the building and the location. Technology was the second highest, but then there are other things like coffee, the quality of a coffee, or like do we have like a nice cafe inside? That we have like a beautiful coffee machine or an espresso machine, and the other things which is more important in terms of have these flexible spaces, having flexible spaces that allow you to leave your office and go work somewhere else. And so, as I was saying, cafes, that becomes extremely important, and not just 11 to 1, 11 to 2 for lunch times, but becomes like an extension of meeting rooms in a way, or a place that you can just go and sit down at the window, outdoor spaces. It becomes extremely important. We see lots of law firms, and now they focus their real estate search on buildings that can offer private terraces more than terraces from that the building can offer as amenity itself for everybody. So yeah, we would love to think that the space has a little bit to do with attracting, and for us it's a continued evolution in the offering and understanding what youngest generations will they ask. One last thing is actually, which is for me, it's crazy, and I see my son. He's just in college, and since he started going into elementary school, the way he was focusing, the way he was studying, it was never at the desk. It was on the floor. It was like multitasking with computer, TV, and everything on. And so these young kids, really, it's just the way they focus and the way they actually act on a day by day. It's different. It's different from other people. So there is a generational also impact in once we consider like the design of a space, which is
No doubt, no doubt. And I'll just add one quick anecdote. It's funny, it's ironic because it's true that the younger generations have probably the strongest skill set to do this multitasking and be on technology. But in the surveys we deployed nationally with some of our clients, it was interesting that the younger demographic expressed the most interest in coming back to the office. So so to your point, Antonello, it'll be interesting because there will be some changes to make to allow for that, right? So that they feel comfortable and it can be productive in that environment coming back.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Good point. Kind of staying on that same topic, Jeb, what do you see as far as the hygienic or the cleanliness side of firms really trying to attract the best and highest level of talent?
Well, it's funny that Andrew mentioned, the younger generation, because by 2025, 75% of the workforce is going to be a millennial. And, millennials, their top two concerns are the legacy of the pandemic and climate change. So going back to the legacy of the pandemic, firms need to be very conscious of all things ESG. And so if your workforce of the future is very concerned about a safe, clean office space, the firm needs to make sure that they're doing everything possible to instill that inside of their four walls, given the fact that the future of their workforce has those two bullet points as their concerns.
So we've heard a lot about the changes in office design, and we've talked a lot about that, but how are rising construction costs changing commercial real estate decisions? Andrew? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. It's a great question and certainly a very timely topic. I mean, all you have to do is look at watch the news or listen to the radio, and we've seen lumber prices more than triple since before COVID. We've seen all sorts of bottleneck issues in ports across the world that are delaying the delivery of materials and causing those costs to increase. But at the same time, we're seeing historic levels of concessions in the market by landlords to attract tenants. So it is really one of the strongest tenant markets in recent history. Leasing activity definitely diminished in a significant way during the pandemic. There's an uptick now on the way back, but landlords have to offer more concessions. And we had a slide that showed that, but I'll just give you the basic stats. Prior to the pandemic, on long-term leases, and meaning 10 to 15-year lease transactions, we were seeing anywhere on average from 14 months of free rental abatement. That number now is up to 22 months on average. We were also seeing tenant improvement allowances, so the money that landlords are giving to build out space, go from on average about $120, $25 a square foot up to $140 to $165 a square foot. So significant shifts. And how that is relevant is that it really facilitates it creates an opportunity for tenants to not just move, but also fund a large portion of some of these changes that we're all discussing, whether it be the layout of the space, improvement in technology. So landlords are more flexible on letting tenants use a portion of the tenant improvement allowance for FF&E, fixtures, furnitures, and equipment. So we can use some of those funds as well as some of the free rent to offset some of the technology improvements that we discussed today. So it's really an amazing time to be a tenant in the market, whether or not you move or not. So whether you restructure and renegotiate your lease in your current building or relocate, you can leverage the market to secure the funds needed to make some of these changes.
Thank you, Andrew. I just have brief question for everyone on the panel. Just answer briefly. I guess looking back, I have a unique perspective because over the last 15 years, I am able to go into all of these different law firms when I'm visiting with customers. So I see not only over the years, but by customer and by law firm, a lot of changes with regard to how their office is laid out and designed and things like that. So I thought it would be interesting to just see what, thinking back over the last 5 years or so, what's been the biggest office design change that you've seen in your legal customers? And do you think this will be affected by the pandemic or what it looks like when we return to the office? Jim Durfee?
Well, I've seen a lot of changes. Obviously, the things that Andrew and Antonella have already talked about and the way it's being restructured. I tell you, the first time I saw benching, I didn't think it would last long. It would only take one person to cough and everybody else would scatter. So I'm not surprised that, all these things were in motion to some degree that accelerated for obvious reasons. We talk about you don't put up a stop sign until after the accident. Well, this took one heck of an accident to put up a stop sign. And I think going forward, as a number of people have said, certainly Jeb with the cleaning, people will wear masks more in certain situations, certainly than they ever did before. We might see them at airports or some people traveling. I think we'll see them for a long time. So I think, but it's also changed our industry. And what it did to change our industry, instead of having movers who moved big, heavy pieces of furniture, we now need a hybrid position. Someone who can disconnect and reconnect a computer, someone who can take apart and reconnect a wall unit, someone who can pack and help with other parts. So it's actually changed our industry in a big way. We're no longer moving big, heavy pieces of furniture. We're handling technology. And so we need somebody who's adept at doing that and the other things to go along with it. And we need to do it quickly and we need to do it expertly. So it's had a huge impact just on our business, let alone impact on law firms and everyone else.
Sure. Jeb, what would you add as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest thing is just the hybrid model. It'll be interesting to see going forward, how firms adjust to what firms are gonna give, allow individuals the opportunity to work 4 days in the office, 1 day out, 3 days, 2 days, kind of what that happy medium is going to be. And kind of going back to the recruiting and the retention standpoint is how are firms going to kind of use that as leverage to in the recruiting to say, if all things are equal at this firm, we're going to allow you to work, a couple of days in the office, whereas the other firm might make you be 5 days, butts in the seat in the office. So I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen is just the hybrid model and how firms are going to keep an overall wellness standpoint inside their office.
Sure. Jim Turner, what about you from a IT or technology standpoint?
So something that I found interesting is for a large part of the pandemic, I was taking note of where people were connecting from. And for me, it was very interesting to see how far people are traveling out and where they're connecting from and the hours that they're working. That was just very interesting. I had built a series of maps based on the location of where these computers were all located across the country. And that was just very interesting to see people working more from their lake houses, working more from the beaches, and working more from, if they're going to work remotely, that people were working from places where they enjoyed being. That was something that I found very interesting.
Sure. Andrew, do you have anything to add as far as the most significant changes you've seen in the? Go for it.
Sure. I mean, I'll say, this is probably a trend that started occurring more than 5 years ago, or certainly before the pandemic. But the change in attitude where people spaces or law firm spaces changed from large, more opulent offices and the large law libraries, et cetera. We saw all that sort of disappear and a focus more on functionality and creating a space that's inviting and to some degree collaboration. And I think also across all industries, people wanting more balance of being able to work when they need to from home and making it to their kids' baseball game or their soccer game. Whereas, 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't probably as important of a priority. And so I think, we're seeing that reflected in the space at the end of the day.
Yep. Antonello, I know you spoke to a lot of these points already with regard to, more private spaces you foresee, different amenities and things like that. But is there anything else you'd like to add to?
Oh, it's very interesting because I've been designing law firms for 20 years. I saw this evolution and especially how we were planning, 10 years ago, and how we are planning a law firm now. As Andrew was saying, the library used to be the crown jewel, and it's gone.
Yeah.
Completely. The major changes that we're seeing right now, case rooms. They used to be building lots of case room in interior space, and also the real estate of DC has this very large floor plates. Case room are tending to disappear, maybe 1 or 2 per floor, just for litigators. The other major change that we're seeing in the last 5 years is changes in office sizes. I remember, corner office at 300 square feet, and now those are gone. I mean, corners might be used by team rooms now. And most of the firms are going towards like one size office, which is going to help a lot to reduce the rentable square foot per attorney overall. Couple of things more like, flexible spaces. But I think the major things, and maybe it's not a trend, but it's something that people are looking more, is to give the office a little bit this hospitality feel. Attorney travels and they go to airport lounges, they go to hotel lounges, and they like what they see there. And so many times the ask says, can I have that in my office? Can I have the feel of a loungy hospitality hotel, comfortable space in my office? And that is a lot. It's something that we are focusing on lately.
I want one of those in my home. Is that possible?
Only if it comes with it has to come with an actual concierge desk with people behind it, staff.
Yeah, exactly. Why not have a concierge in your home? Okay.
Yeah, and Antonello, I've certainly seen that over in the newest law firms that have recently been built. I certainly sense that. You can feel it when you walk into some of these newer designs. I guess in the essence of time, since we are pushing up to 1 o'clock, I want to kind of end there and allow anyone to ask any questions. If there are follow-up questions, if you have a specific question to one of the business partners themselves. Anyone? I don't see anything here. So I guess we will sort of conclude the panel. We appreciate your time. I hope that you found this useful. I really think you guys law firm administrators have a lot to juggle, as you always have, but especially now as you're planning a constant changing schedule and plan and a phased timeline of different people coming back in. You guys are faced with a lot of challenges, and I hope that this is useful, and please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if there is a question within our industry that you think would help you in any way. So
I want to thank you for today's event. This was fantastic. I think it's given us a lot to think about, as well as really good information. Again, to all of the members who attended, if you have questions, please reach out to the members of the panel. I'm sure they're willing to help out in any way possible. Again, thanks for putting on such a fantastic event today.
thank you for having us.